Hi, my name is Mark McPherson. Many years ago, I read a book by Patrick Morley that really made an influence on me. The book's called The 7 Seasons of a Man's Life. And in that book, Morley develops this, his thesis, his theory, that for Christians, for those who purport to or profess to or talk about believing in God, the God that's revealed in the Bible, there are really two different gods, and they're very different. There's the God we want, and there's the God who is. And he says, his argument is that our life changes profoundly when we stop following the God we want and we start following the God who is. And he went on to define kind of the differences between those two gods. And I'll go through that in a minute, because that really opened my eyes. I have found that his theory, at least as applied to me in my experience in my life, to be absolutely dead-on accurate. And maybe it'll be the same for you. Those that look for the God we want, then we, those people, and myself included, from time to time, we figure out what it is we want to happen. We kind of like reverse engineer it. Figure out what we want to happen, and we cherry pick verses out of the Bible that support what we want to do or what we've decided we're going to do. We use logical arguments to support those decisions and actions. If that takes ignoring parts of the Bible, we can do that. If it takes ignoring the Bible altogether, sometimes we do that too. The problem is that when we die, we're not going to meet the God we want. It's not going to be the God we want sitting up there saying whether or not we get into heaven or whether we are going to hell. It's going to be the God who is. So we really need to stop fooling ourselves and figure out what it is that we're doing in this world to make sure that we end up where we want to be and where we think we're going to be then. And personally, I think that there's more self-deception involved in this than just about anything. Those of us who believe in God, of course, everybody wants to go to heaven and nobody wants to go to hell. And most everybody I've ever met believes that that's what's going to happen to them when they die. They're going to go to heaven. They're not going to go to hell. Statistically, I don't see how that's possible, because the Bible makes it pretty doggone clear that there are going to be few people that go to heaven. Most everybody's going to hell. Certainly, it makes clear that our default setting is we're bound for hell unless we make a radical, substantial, huge, big change during our lives. And we live that change out from the minute we decide to make the change until we die. We start out not so good at it, but we keep practicing and practicing and practicing and get better at it over time, so that when we can pick 2 points in time, later, we can see a gradual improvement over that point in time. There's so much that goes into that, and I'll have other video blogs on my ideas about that. But for the moment, let's stay focused on this difference between the God who is and the God we want, because like I said, I'm quite sure we are not going to encounter the God we want when we die. So let's make sure that we're going to the place that we want to get to. In another video, I talked about my definition of faith, and that is do the right thing and let the chips fall where they may. And this is really where this God we want and God who is comes into play. The God we want lets us do what we want to do. We can have much more influence on what is right and wrong. Do the right thing, and then letting the chips fall where they may. The fact of the matter is, the God we want lets us arrange those chips and lets us decide where we want those chips to be and act accordingly. The God who is doesn't do any of that. The God who is says, this is what the Bible instructs you to do. That's what you're supposed to do. Do that. Period. do that. Stop. Let me deal with the rest. Let me arrange the chips in your life. Trust me to do it, and I will. That's, to me, the practical definition and difference between the God who is and the God we want. But let's talk about how you figure out which one of those you are, which one of those you're serving. And Patrick Morley's book has a lot of really good explanation of this. And so I want to refer to some of this he's got here. The God that we want focuses on man, earth, and created things. So it's going to focus on houses. It's going to focus on jobs, careers. It's going to focus on cars, created things. It's going to focus on 401ks, retirement plans, health benefits. The God who is, if that's who we're serving, our focus is going to be on God and heaven and eternal things. So when we say do the right things and let the chips fall where they may, those chips may not fall until after we die. We may suffer negative consequences from the minute we do the right thing until the minute we die, and not receive the reward for that until the afterlife. But the God we want, make sure we're taken care of between now and the time we die. Now here's some goals and emphases. The God we want, if you're serving the God we want, you're going to focus on self-help, personal fulfillment, your desire to be something, and you're going to use God for guidance, support, and help. You're going to talk a lot in your prayers about what your will is and trying to bargain with God to get more of your will implemented in this life before you die. If you're serving the God who is, in contrast, you're focused on ushering in God's kingdom. You're focused on pleasing God instead of yourself. You're focusing on being used by God, figuring out what that is, and then getting about doing it. Just whatever God wants you to do, whatever God wants you to be. If that makes you something, fine. If it makes you nothing, you're fine with that too. Instead of guidance and support and help, you're focused on God, salvation, and holiness. If you serve the God we want, well, let's put it this way. Do you say and think in terms of either I belong to Jesus or Jesus belongs to me? If Jesus belongs to you, if Christ exists for the sake of man, those are big clues that you're serving the God you want. Whereas if you think that I belong to Jesus and man exists for the sake of Christ, those are indications that you're serving the God who is. The key to this is honesty, for one thing. You have to be honest with yourself. Who is it that you're serving? Are you, when it comes to determining the right thing, who influences you? What influences you? Is it the Bible and nothing but the Bible? Is it the consequences of your action and backing up, kind of reverse engineering from there to figure out what it is that would be in your best interest? That's not the God you're going to meet. I'm quite convinced. I know. I believe. That's my faith. That's not the God you're going to meet when you die. We need to be focused on, Christians need to be focused on the God who is, and showing the God who is by their actions to the world. It's no wonder Christianity has the bad rap that it does. If there's no significant change between not being a Christian and being a Christian, if people look at good people, but they don't see the change, what's the point? Christianity is nothing. It is a crutch. It is mental salve, an opiate, just to get you through life, kind of numb you to the consequences of your actions so that you can Do whatever it is you want to do with comfort. Everything works fine until you die. Then the rubber meets the road. Who are you going to meet? We're going to meet the God who is. How much do you know about that God? I mean, these are heavy questions. This goes hand in hand with my definition of faith to kind of make it more practical and on a daily basis. Do the right thing as instructed by the Bible. Let chips fall where they may. Give God control of the chips. That's faith. And when you do that, when people see you doing that, they'll see that that's different. They'll see the change. It will add credibility to your faith. We're not going to be perfect at it. Nobody is. Certainly I'm not either. Although that checklist that Patrick Morley had of serving the God we want, checked every one of those. Done them every one. And I still occasionally do. My goal is to, over time, check off less. Less often, less items. So that I'm checking more on serving the God who is. Intentionally and deliberately. So that's how I see things. And just give it a try and see. But at least be honest with yourself. If you do nothing else, be honest with yourself as to what it is that you're really doing in your life. And be willing to accept those consequences. At least do it deliberately. And check out my other video on faith and the definition of love. To act in someone's best interest. There'll be others in the series about grace, mercy, and forgiveness, because that's a critical component of what we're doing. And keep watching, and we'll see you next time.